Talking about type 1, type 2 diabetes. I'll tell you guys the difference, explain a little bit about how you can get it or how you can't get it for that matter, some of the effects in it, and most importantly, how it affects you inside of your body. Here's a healthy cell. That healthy cell is going to have a few things on it. The first thing you notice is over here on the side, it has receptors or openings. That is how the energy gets into that healthy cell. Inside of the cell, we see a little equation right now. I'm not going to tell you what the G and the I stand for, but just know that those are energy inside of there. Here's where you're going to find out what those mean. Glucose and insulin. So the G is glucose, the I is the insulin. That's what equals energy inside of a cell. Without these two, that energy cannot get in that cell whatsoever. It gets blocked out, things start to happen, and that's where diabetes is really going to start coming into play. First and foremost, type 1 diabetes. The thing about type 1 diabetes is the only way that you could ever get it is from mom or dad or grandma, grandpa. It has to be within your bloodline. It has to be a genetic link, and it's going to be passed to you probably at a really young age. You're going to find out that you have diabetes roughly at about 1 or 2 years of age if you contract type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is known as juvenile diabetes simply because we mainly find out about it when we're kids. The things that we start to notice is maybe a 1.5 to 2-year-old child has frequent urination. They constantly maybe wet themselves. Very thirsty a lot, very hungry a lot, no matter how much they eat, because their blood is just not getting that energy, or their cells aren't getting that energy from the blood. The reason so is because we don't have our complete equation. We're going to get the glucose, but the problem with type 1 diabetes is we're not going to get the insulin. The insulin, remember, it has to match up with that glucose to go into the cell and work properly. Pancreas is located just kind of underneath the liver, and its primary job is to produce that insulin. It helps out with digestion a little bit, but for the most part, its main goal is to produce insulin. If it's not working properly, we have to get insulin. So somebody who is type 1 diabetic might have an insulin pump hooked up that's constantly pumping insulin into the bloodstream, or they may have to give themselves injections 2-3 times a day in order to make sure that their blood sugar levels aren't too high or too low for that matter. Type 2 diabetes is a little bit different. It's not necessarily passed from mom and dad. There's sometimes where we see it run in family lines, but mom and dad don't necessarily give it to the child. This is something that I kind of like to say that you sometimes earn. With poor diet, with improper amounts of exercise, that's where type 2 diabetes comes in. The problem with it right now is that so many Americans are either overweight or obese, or they're just eating foods that aren't good for them, getting too much sugar in their streams. And what they're realizing is over time they're becoming diabetic. This is something that as nutrition and fitness students you should be trying to combat. This is something that we need to be paying attention to because so many of our diets are so laden with sugar that we're not getting the good things in our system, the proteins and carbohydrates. And so many of us or many of our family members here in the coming years we're going to start seeing a huge trend or an even bigger trend in people that are becoming type 2 diabetic. Here's the difference on how it affects you inside of the body. You still have glucose, you still have insulin. The problem is your cells, they don't have as many openings or as many of those receptors. So it'd be like putting fuel into a little tiny fuel tank and then trying to go 200 miles. It's just not going to work. The cells are not going to get the energy that they need. And the problem is, and the problem we see with a lot of people with type 2 diabetes is it kind of starts from the bottom up. We start to see maybe their feet dying off, their feet start to swell up because their feet aren't getting the energy they need. The second thing that starts to go with people with type 2 diabetes is their vision. Same concept. Our eyes use a lot of energy. And so if we're not getting the sugars we need or the energy we need into the cells properly, our eyes can actually shut down and we can go blind, and we've seen people go blind. Type 1, type 2 diabetes. I hope you guys kind of understand a little bit of a difference between it. What I want you to do as nutrition students is I want you to go in now and I'd like you to research what foods are good for people who are maybe teetering on the edge of type 2 diabetes, or maybe they already have type 2 or type 1 diabetes, and I'd like you to create a breakfast, lunch, and dinner for those people. Thank you.